Some More Outdoor, Episode 8.
Welcome to Some More Outdoor, where we speak with authors, entrepreneurs, and business owners about how the outdoors has affected their life and their projects. This show is to remind you of the healing properties of the outdoors. So, are you ready to learn what the nature effect can do for your life? Well, here's your host, Brett Trout.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Some More Outdoor. I'm your host, Brett Trout, and this is a podcast dedicated to reminding you to get out and experience the nature effect. My goal is to help you reestablish a connection with nature so you can live with childlike wonder again. So thanks for joining me today. I'm really excited to have a good friend of mine, Justin Lukasavige, here to share his story about the outdoors. So welcome, Justin.
Hey, Brett, thanks for having me. Excited to talk to you.
Oh, I'm excited to hear your story and to share with our listeners the impact that nature has had on your life and where you are today with that. So Justin's a story writer. He helps individuals and businesses tell better stories that attract customers and change the world. He graduated from college with a degree in aviation and immediately became a commercial pilot. Knowing it wasn't the story that he wanted to live, he began coaching people to get out of debt. He grew his business so quickly with the help of coaches and mentors that other business owners took notice and asked for advice on doing the same. So Justin, I've shared with people a little bit about you, but why don't you take it away and share who you are and what you do, and we'll go from there.
The complexities of Justin.
Yes.
Well, yeah, gosh, I kind of got out of college, as you said, went to the airline, started this business thing, and have really always been into the outdoors. And it wasn't until, it was actually a couple years before we made a big move from North Carolina to Colorado, but in kind of running that business and realizing that, man, I just need to get away and kind of get out and do stuff outside of the office. And I started devoting Friday afternoons to going out and just walking. And it started with a 6-mile loop, and then my dog started joining me, and I started doing about 10 miles every Friday, 9 to 10 miles. And it was then that I realized that, I love the outdoors, but there's this connection where I can get out there and just everything just fades away, and I'm just there, and all I have is my thoughts. And and then we moved to Colorado a couple years after that. So I've been here about 3.5 years, I think. And get to be in the outdoors a lot more frequently than I was in the past. And it's kind of a special thing for me. It's, even when I'm out in the city working, directly in a kind of company environment, I frequently have to get up and just leave and walk around a neighborhood. And I find that it's not the majestic, surrounded by mountains and waterfalls and glaciers or whatever you're envisioning. It's just really just being outside and walking through, just a beautiful old neighborhood with, just tall trees. It's just being out there and being away from everything else that kind of gets me going.
Yeah, absorbing all that.
Yeah.
And just going out and getting out, even if it's only for a few minutes, like you say, to get away from work and just look at your surroundings and become that child again and admire the beauty that's around you on that. And I remember a few weeks back, I think it was, you had posted something on your Instagram with, I guess you were pulling up from work and there was a buck or a deer that was in your driveway or some type of animal. I don't remember what it was, and it's just like, gosh, you don't see that in the city. And so I appreciate you sharing that kind of stuff, where you live at I think, 9,000 feet?
Yeah, we're close to that. We're just shy of 9,000 feet. And yeah, we have all these deer that are almost domesticated. I mean, you can feed them grass from your hands, which just sounds odd. They're kind of like horses.
Yeah.
But they'll come up to you, and they mainly respect dogs, and they watch out for cars mostly.
Yeah.
We see a lot of deer, but it's pretty rare to actually see one get hit by a car. They're just, they're used to people and cars and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a special place. I mean, we live in the county, but it's 1.5 miles to walk into the city, into downtown. There's only about 7,000 people out here, and so I do that frequently. So Yeah, I kind of live in the wilderness, but also in a neighborhood, and so I have the best of both worlds.
Well, and what's so great about it too is even with you sharing that picture of the deer and sharing it with the world and all your followers and no matter how many times, and I don't know how it is for you, even coming home, you get excited just to see it in your driveway. But I know going up to Yosemite or Sequoia, it's like everybody stops to see a deer,
Yeah,
and to
yeah.
take pictures and stuff because we don't have those natural things happening in our life on a day to day basis, going
Yeah,
to work.
yeah, for sure. And you can always tell the tourists that are out here, and and I don't make fun of them, and I certainly hope I don't take what I have here for granted because we still, frequently it's like we're driving, it's like, hey, look at the deer, and so we point them out and that kind of thing, and sometimes they don't get in the way, but it's like, oh, cool deer, but I got to go to this thing, and
Yeah.
it's still special every time we see that, or we look out the window and see a fox or a bear running down the road. It's something that we try not to take for granted, but when you get used to those kinds of things, it does become something a little bit different.
Right, right. Well, and you share a lot too through social media. You share a lot about your lifestyle, living where you live. And, I know it's to share what you do, but to share that lifestyle with people who are pursuing, so they can have a better business, but pursuing with your following and your fans that the lifestyle that you're living is something for all of us to aspire to, and to be able to
Hmm.
have that freedom to be able to go out and move across country to a place where you want to be, which was huge. And that was such a big move, coming from, because you were near the Smoky Mountains, right?
Yeah, in the middle of
Kind of.
North Carolina, so we were close to that, but we were in between the mountains and the ocean, a couple hours from each.
Okay, cool, cool. Well, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with me. So let's go ahead and dive right into what I like. Quotes. Quotes. Everybody's sharing quotes. Everybody's posting quotes on photographs, and you can look on Pinterest, and there's all kinds of quotes everywhere. So everybody loves quotes, and I love nature quotes because it's part of who I am. So I want to take a moment and just see if you have a quote that you would like to share and how S'more Outdoor listeners can apply this quote to their life.
It's funny because you say that, and I think, well, gosh, I'm not really a big quote guy, and uh, if you were to ask me about a quote pertaining to anything, I probably couldn't come up with one. But this in particular one has stayed with me, and I don't know if this was a quote so much as a funny saying that somebody came up with a long time ago. I'm sure I didn't create it, but I had this little plastic mug, and I used to take it camping with me. Oh gosh, I think I got it from an outdoor company in high school, I bet. And it said, "You can't get lost if you don't care where you are." And plenty of times I've been lost and I've cared where I am, and so it's absolutely
Yeah.
true. Um, but just that sort of, without really spending much time even thinking about it, it really embodies my view of the outdoors. Because for me, it's some people are like, "Oh, I have to get here, I have to accomplish this," and um, there's a lot of activities that I love in the outdoors, but for me, it's really about the people that I'm with. Even if it's by myself, sometimes I have an objective, but really that greater objective is just to be there.
Hmm.
And in high school and college, I spent a lot of years rock climbing, and just shy of competing, and I got really good, and I'm nowhere near that level of climbing anymore. But still, even the most fun that I have now is going climbing with my kids, and I may not even climb. It's just being there, taking somebody who's never been before, and just taking them rock climbing or hiking somewhere and showing them something they haven't seen. And it's like, there's a great objective. We could climb to the top of this, or hike to the top of this mountain. But for me, it's like, man, hey, we're going to go out and do that. But listen, I just want to be here. And so I'm not let down at all. And so as that ties back to this quote, "You can't get lost if you don't care where you are," that just sums up how I feel about nature. I don't go there to accomplish a race or, to do this big feat. And sometimes that's part of it. But really, for me, I'm not let down at all. It's just, I just want to be there.
Right. Well, and there's something about it too. And you mentioned about taking people there, taking your kids there. And for me, getting out there, and I'm sure it's the same with you with your kids, is to see them light up,
Yeah.
when they're out there, and that childhood wonder that comes back to people. And that's why I'm so passionate about people getting outdoors, because I know how it makes me feel. And there's a lot of people that don't get that chance to get out on a regular basis,
Right.
Whether they live in Los Angeles or, some places where it's not easy, or it takes a long time to get out of the city because of traffic and things like that. But that childhood wonder that we all experience who go out there, and not necessarily to have an objective, but just to be, and just to absorb the surroundings and relax and really unplug from our chaotic life.
Sure.
That Marta said earlier today, which was great. And leading into that, so childhood memories to me, I've got a lot of childhood memories about the outdoors, and there's certain ones that are very special to me. So tell me a story from your childhood about an experience in the outdoors, and really take us to that time in your life and tell us that story.
I've been thinking through this, and I have so many. I mean, I'm very fortunate that my parents were just incredibly intentional about taking us outside and doing things. And we had a boat growing up, and you look at boats, it's not that much money. Gas is a lot more expensive now, but I'm sure my parents paid $1,500 or something for a boat. And just being out on the lake and on the river, and we'd go somewhere in the weekends. And then living in South Dakota, there were these falls, kind of a city thing growing up in Sioux Falls, that we'd go and walk around. And my mom would yell at me for climbing on stuff, and she'd turn her back, and my dad was like, "Hey, you should climb this." And camping and all of that stuff. And I'm just so fortunate for all of those memories. One that just really pops into my head right now, though, is I was born in Wisconsin, and being up there with my grandparents, specifically on my grandfather's side, or on my father's side. And on my mom's side, we'd go fishing and a lot of stuff there. But my grandparents on my father's side were really into cross-country skiing. And so we sort of picked that up when we were kids and went out and rented skis as a family. And I have a brother and two sisters, and my parents and I would do that. But then being in Wisconsin, out on the Wisconsin River in central Wisconsin, and in the snow with my grandma and grandpa, and this is even more special because my grandmother passed away just a couple of months ago. But being out there and just this adventurous spirit that the two of them had, it didn't matter what we were doing, but we're going to go outside and go hiking or fishing. But specifically this cross-country skiing on this trail out there, I can remember it vividly. And I must have been, 8 or 10 years old, just cross-country skiing around the frozen lakes and the running rivers out there in Wisconsin, and just the quietness and the solitude is really just amazing. And my grandfather's still around. He's 84 years old, and just still has this spirit of wanting to be outside. And again, I really haven't thought much about this until now, but I think I get a lot of that from him, where he just really enjoyed being there with his kids and his grandkids, and now his great grandkids. And doing fires in his backyard and roasting stuff. It doesn't matter what we're doing. It's just that feeling of being there with other people.
You definitely took us there on that journey with you. And what I love about stories, and what I'm finding when I interview people about this childhood memory that they have, is that it brings back some killer emotions for them. And we all have that. And that's what I'm trying to get with this message, is to help people relive those childhood memories and think about that, because they're so special. And especially something like that, where it's your grandfather and your grandmother who instilled in you this love for the outdoors. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of people get that, but there are certain things where, we remember from our childhood that our parents would take us to different places, or grandparents, and those memories are the ones that stick with us. The ones where we're sitting inside playing video games, I don't remember those too much.
Right.
But I remember going and camping for a week at a time on Lake Powell. We'd pack everything in our boat and go out and do this every single trip I remember.
Right.
And just what we did on each of those trips, but nothing about playing video games or watching TV or things like that when I was younger. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Sure.
So the next one I'd like to talk to you about is an outdoor experience. There's always this place that you go to that it just kind of opens things up for you, and you're just like completely amazed. For example, recently in 2010 was being able to go to Yosemite for the first time, and I've lived in California my whole life, but experiencing that with my parents and stuff. So why don't you tell us a story kind of similar to that, where you visited the most beautiful place you'd ever been to, and share with us that experience and the effect that nature had on you.
This is a really tough one for me. I've been so incredibly fortunate to have gone to a lot of places, and there's certainly some really amazing trips where I get to do a lot of traveling with adventure, with outdoor companies, and so I do outdoor reviews on outdoor gear and stuff like that. And so recently I went to the Middle East and traveled around Jordan with Columbia Sportswear for a week and a half, and I've been climbing and some of the highest points, the highest peak in South America in Aconcagua, and oh my gosh, just an amazing trip, and France and Switzerland and Italy, right on the border of France and Italy is Mount Blanc, and just some really incredible places. But in all of the grandeur of some incredibly beautiful places, especially the Middle East, which I thought was going to be just desert and sand, incredibly lush and wet and canyons and waterfalls and just amazing. But what I come back to is actually a trip that I took with my family this summer. We did a 2-week road trip, and we put an emphasis on my extended family spends 2 weeks together in northern Wisconsin out on a lake. We decided to spend about a week there and spend the other week driving to and from and camping along the way, and especially trying to avoid interstates. Mm-hmm. And it has become, and the year before we did that, we went to California, out to Northern California, and then down to LA, and back through the Grand Canyon, and stayed with some friends in Arizona. And, I think to this trip across places that a lot of people probably will never have an urge to go to, but through Wyoming and Nebraska and South Dakota, Minnesota, and ultimately Wisconsin. And South Dakota is one of the most beautiful states. And I'm a little biased. I mainly grew up there, second grade through the end of my 9th grade year. I lived out in eastern South Dakota, but so I relived some of those memories, but really just being in some of these places with my kids, the Badlands and Wind Cave and Mount Rushmore, and then some lakes, and just really some no-name places that would be really hard to find on a map after reaching them through a gravel road, but just being there with my kids on a lake with an amazing sunset, and setting up a camp in the rain because we thought it would be a fun adventure, and it was. Yeah. It's that trip, and above the beauty and the splendor of all those other things that I'm so incredibly fortunate to have seen, even so early in my life, because most people never will.
Right.
I come back to a lake that doesn't even need to be named because it's not worth visiting. But for me, it was just being there in that moment with my kids for this one snapshot in time, because we'll never be able to revisit that again, having in the same circumstances with them being the same age and discovering new things. Those, like you said, it's not those video games. Although I can remember the first time I beat Mario Brothers, right. Super Mario Brothers 1.
Yes.
And I had a lot of fun playing Tetris as a kid. But it's those things that I'm going to be remembering, and I hope my kids will be telling their grandkids stories about that. And so those outdoor experiences really have a big place in my mind.
Well, and absolutely, and it's just like you were saying, you remembered, like today, you remembered that story about you and your grandparents doing that cross-country skiing in Wisconsin. And, it reminded me of a trip when I was about 8 years old, and my parents took us to a family reunion from California all the way to Michigan. And, as a kid, I know it seemed like a long time, but I don't remember how long it was. And I found out a couple of years ago, it's actually 6 weeks that we were gone. But I remember everything about that trip, and it was so much fun. And so what you've done for your kids is just amazing, and that trip, they'll remember it for a lifetime, and they'll be able to share that stories. At least the older ones will anyways. And
Sure.
the younger
Yep.
one will definitely have the vision, those vision memories that we have.
Yeah. Yep.
That
Absolutely.
we've gained from the outdoors. But your kids are so lucky to be able to grow up where you've taken them, to experience that type of lifestyle. So awesome. So the nature effect, it's something that I've come up with, and just kind of pretty simple, just the effect that nature has on us. How does the nature effect have an impact in your business and life today?
You mentioned earlier, I started this thing called Trail Talk. And I started that when I lived in North Carolina, and I was out hiking around, 5 to 10 miles, and listening to podcasts and different audiobooks and things like that. And, just realizing that, I'm bringing in this information, and gosh, maybe somebody else could benefit from it without having to find and even listen to this one episode of this podcast they've probably never heard of. And it's something that's connected with me as I've moved out to Colorado, and I started doing that, and I've since stopped doing that a while back. But it was a lot of fun because I could get out there, and you're in the middle of nowhere. There's no billboards calling your attention. There's no other cars you have to worry about hitting. And I would get so absorbed in my thoughts out there that I'd come out, I'd stumble upon deer, and they were, kind of like we talked about earlier. They weren't expected for me back then, and so I'd spook them, and they'd jump and run, and so that'd scare the crap out of me.
Right.
But because I was so absorbed in this one podcast where I couldn't focus. I won't call it ADHD. I've never even talked to a doctor about that, but I think on some level, we all have varying degrees of, difficulty focusing on things. And for me, this isn't the same for everybody, by any means, but, I found that when I get out there, there's nothing else for me to focus on. And so if I have something I'm struggling through, or, something I need to figure out, being able to get away from anywhere that has a computer. I didn't have a smartphone back then. Just being able to turn that on, or even just turn it off, and just walk, for an hour and a half to 2.5 or 3 hours. And, now I'll be out here, and, I might spend 14 miles climbing something that's going to take me, 4 hours round trip. And there's nobody in the middle of nowhere. There's no cell phone reception. That effect that it has on those ideas, or the things that I'm struggling or grasping, through, is really just incredible. And as I mentioned earlier, I might be working down in the city, and working in an old historic office building outside of Colorado Springs, and it's just a beautiful neighborhood. And I might get out and walk 1.5 miles, kind of saunter through a number of blocks, and I love those old houses. But just being out there and being able to focus. I know that I get very absorbed in stuff when I'm crossing a street and I almost get hit by a car, because I'm so focused on this one thought that I realize, well, there's other things out here. And so that's what it has for me. It's not the overwhelming majesty of one thing or another. It's just being able to get away from everything else.
Definitely. Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, I'd like to go into a little inspiration, because, like you said, you get out a lot just to think, and to go to hike. And in the beginning, when you started getting out, you were in North Carolina. You said you'd listen to podcasts and stuff, which I like to too, but there's those times when I can't listen to music, and I just need to go out there and completely unplug. So for ideas and things like that, I've gone up to Sequoia and come back with an idea for an ebook that I want to write or something, So what was one idea that you had? You probably had many, but one idea that, just like me, we have all these kinds of ideas, but one idea that was inspired from your time outdoors.
It's funny that I'm actually, if you go to coachradio.tv/trail talk, gosh, these are old too. But I'm just looking at all these. This is where all these, and it's all videos. My wife's with me in some. Here's one in Salina, Kansas, when I was out there we were taking a road trip. I had It's really too many to list. All the good ones that I can talk about are just ideas that ended up making me a lot of money.
Hmm. Right.
And sometimes I mean a lot of money. Like I remember laying on my office floor. In fact, this was right when I started taking these walks. Now that I think about it, so I had this office in North Carolina. I had a number of people working for me, and I just remember thinking, like, I don't know how I'm going to buy groceries next week or tomorrow. And I just remember, just having that thought of, gosh, I need to figure something out. And I was literally, and I used to dress up back then because I was meeting with a lot of people in person. They needed to take me seriously. So I had these, it was basically everything shy of like a suit coat and a tie. And I remember like just laying there on my floor, staring at the ceiling with this sick feeling. And I went out and I walked around the parking lot, and that was it. And I just remember thinking, hey, this is pretty good. And that's when this really started that week. And it was every single week after that. I routinely left shortly after it was kind of the joke back then when I had people working for me that, I'd get to work and I'd leave shortly after that to go on and do these walks on Fridays. But I had so many ideas that really saved, like, hey, what if I could, I'm working with people and doing this. What if I could combine people into a group and it'd be so beneficial and I could charge for it? And I wonder what, and I throw ideas out, and man, they were some of the best money making ideas that I ever had and really kept the company afloat. And so many ideas came to me like, maybe I should just try this. And just out of the blue, I was not thinking about, hey, I need this idea. I was just pondering something, and I just randomly would come up with this idea. And so, nothing specific in that, but so many times these weird ideas would pop into my head, and I thought, man, I should try that. And not every single one of them worked, but the majority of money-making ideas that I had come up with of, hey, what could I charge for, products and services throughout my business over those years, were really came to me while I was out just walking around this loop in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Well, yeah, and I remember one specifically, and I'm pretty sure it came on one of your trail talks. It was Need a Topic.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think was one that you had said that had come while you were out there. And so just being able to, and that was after I met you. So I guess that one sticks with me.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That definitely
well.
came to me outside walking around.
Why don't you share with people what Need a Topic was or is?
It still is out there. In fact, I sold it. I no longer own it.
Okay.
I believe I think it was needatopic.com. So let's look. I'm real good friends with the guy that I sold it to, and I think that still up there in all its glory.
Yes.
In fact,
Still looks the same.
Still has my name on it. So we'll send some folks over there, though you can no longer join it. I know he was going to do something with it. So Need a Topic was this idea. Let me see if I can get this right, because I closed this down 3-ish years ago. And it was this idea that people were asking me, like, gosh, and keep in mind the internet was a little bit different, 3.5 to 4 years ago. I did that for at least a year, I want to say, where people were struggling with the idea of blogging. It wasn't new, but it was definitely a newish idea in business, and people felt like they definitely need to put more work towards doing it. And so I had this idea of, what if I could just start this blog? I had a number of blogs. I don't know. I was doing like 14 blog posts a week, I remember telling somebody. And so I had this idea that I would create topics, or I think it was topics, tips, and techniques, if I remember right, around blogging space. And so I would put those out on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And the idea was to really just get the juices flowing for the people who would subscribe to that, and help turn those wheels over and give them topic ideas, and then tips on how to blog and how to do it better, and then techniques on how to grow a community around that. And I want to say that I was charging like $7.
$7.
$7. Okay. $7 a month. And it wasn't a huge money maker. I want to say that at some point I was just shy of 100 people on that. So it wasn't a huge money maker, but I never did a lot to market it. And so, I'm making there was basically no overhead on that. And so I was making like $700 a month, and I would write 3 short blog posts a week. I mean, they were, you saw those, there were probably 3 paragraphs, 3 or 4 short paragraphs. And I would get a lot of really good feedback from people like, hey, this is great, or you inspired this. And yeah, that thing just came to me. I can't remember specifically where I was, but I know I definitely spent a lot of time noodling that while out on the trail. I completely forgot about that. I can't believe you brought that up.
Yeah, well, I had just seen it when I was looking on your About page, and it was showing on there. And what I love about that, and what I love about your story around this specific idea, or this one idea, is that a lot of times as we pursue our dream jobs and pursue, getting out of a job that we're no longer fit for, or trying to figure out how we're going to support our family because we have all these dreams and goals that we want to accomplish, that we struggle with ideas. Yeah. We struggle with, with all the stuff like you said, all the distractions and all these billboards and just constantly vying for our attention. And you said it earlier that even though, some of us may have not been diagnosed with ADHD, we all have something that keeps on. Oh, I got to do this. And even more so now than ever, because everything's on demand now, and all the videos and stuff like that. But to be able to get away, for those people that are wanting to get or wanting to start a business or have a business, that getting outdoors can definitely inspire thoughts, and ideas. And what you do with those is a different story. But at least you have time to break away from your electrical paradise and really unplug and allow yourself to connect with yourself, and just be free to think about all the different things that you do want to do on that. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad that I brought back some nostalgia for you.
Yeah, definitely.
On that. So cool. So what we're going to do now is go into some of the latter questions. And it's really, these questions are more focused on helping people understand the importance. I mean, all of the questions are, but really helping the people understand some easy ways to get outdoors, how you feel when you're not able to get outdoors and different things like that. So we'll jump right into when you do go outdoors right now. Let's say, you say you go out for a walk at work and stuff, but like on the weekends and things like that, what are some of the things that you do, some simple things that you do to get outdoors?
Oh, well, this probably won't sound very simple to a lot of people,
right.
But ski season is upon us very, very, very quickly here. In fact, one of our resorts opened we have a family passes to 3 different resorts out here. And one of them opened on October 21st. It was a while ago. It's not extremely great yet. And I haven't been out yet. We're not that hardcore. But that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to. Skiing can easily take up 6 months or more, and I do a fair amount of backcountry touring, so getting out and touring and climbing things and then skiing down them. And like I mentioned, we have a family pass, and this is the first year that all of our family, we have 3 kids, well, actually 4 kids. We have an exchange student living with us all of this school year as well. But this is the first time we've had passes for everybody. And my kids are amazing skiers at 6, 8, and our oldest is almost 10 years old. And so at least 6 months out of the year, it's a hefty amount that a lot of people kind of balk at. But when I look at, man, this is really focused time that we get to spend together as a family, skiing together on almost every single Saturday and Sunday. I cannot wait. It's going to be a blast. We skied about 4 days out together as a family last year, and our kids are amazing. So I love that physical activity. Sometimes you can just charge real hard down a hill, and you can go out and tour some of the side country off the resorts, or I'll go out backcountry skiing and, with a small group of friends. So I love the physical aspects of that. But, as I said before, I got to come back to that community and doing it as a family or with people who are about to become real close friends. That I really, really love. So it's about a lot of things for me.
And for those people that don't have a place where we can head to and go ski, just simple, like you said, community is such a great feeling when you can go out and share that experience with family and friends. And
man, and you know what? We have, I don't know, a little fire ring in our backyard. It's nothing special. It's literally just, some rocks surrounding a big pile of ashes at this point. And throughout most of the year, I mean, I cannot remember the last weekend we haven't had a fire. Sometimes it's just our family. A lot of times it's just really good friends. Sometimes it's people passing through I haven't seen in years. Sometimes there's people show up I don't know at all. And anybody can do that. I lived in North
Campfire
Carolina.
crashers.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
And
funny.
we have this guest book of people that just randomly stay on our couch, or we have a little carport in the backyard with mattresses under it because I built a little climbing bouldering wall. And just we have this guest book of people that come, and it's just really good memories. But we never did that in North Carolina. But there's no reason, unless for some reason, don't quote me on this, but fires might be banned in your neighborhood,
Right.
or something. But anybody can do that. I mean, you get a little bundle of firewood for $5 from the gas station. You can get that at almost any city, and just do that, man. Grab a drink and some hot dogs and some sticks, and just there's no electricity, and you just sit out there. And we do that for hours almost every single weekend. Like I mentioned, I can't remember. It's probably been months since we've had a weekend, or at least even done it one night during the week, where we haven't done that.
Yeah, and fires are so awesome. Campfires especially are so awesome, and just making s'mores, obviously, and just those conversations. Like we were saying, when those trips that you used to go on, our camping trips, is the memories, the stories we used to tell around the campfire. And even, and like you say, it may be banned in your particular neighborhood. I know, living out in the Central Valley of California, November 1st, it just started with the, you have to check before you burn. So you have to make sure for the air quality because of the winter. But October, man, I was every morning up with a fire outside, just because I was able to do that and able to enjoy it.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so many different things. So thank you for sharing that. Just helping give people ideas on what they can do.
Yeah, and man,
to get out.
it's as simple as that sounds, and it's your whole brand and everything. But s'mores, it's so simple, and yet like you never see people smile like they do when they have a s'more. And so our exchange student that's living with us, one of the first weeks she was out here, we did a fire and cooked up hamburgers and hot dogs out there and did s'mores. And I was like, hey, so have you ever had a s'more? And she didn't know what they are, and then we'd made them, and she was like, oh yeah, I've heard of these. And we're talking, and she said, I've never been this close to a fire. It was
Wow.
like, she's 16 now, and I was like, that's wow, okay. So let me give your listeners a little tip here. This isn't new, and some people refer to it as Rocky Mountain s'mores. But I'm sure somebody probably invented them in Vermont or somewhere before I ever heard of them. And I didn't invent them. But they've become some of our favorites. Instead of chocolate, you can use peanut butter cups. And if you really want to get indulgent and only want to eat one thing, you make little brownies and muffins, and then cut those in half and put your marshmallow inside the brownie. You will be done after one of those.
Oh, wow.
And it's pretty amazing.
I've never heard that. I know I did have, I don't know if it was Kevin Miller that had said the Colorado s'mores. I think
Yep.
when we were out there with the Reese's. I know one of my buddies that he always we go camping up in Sequoia, Yosemite, and he pays me to do the s'more outdoor trips with him. But he just loved the first time that we took Ghirardelli chocolate, and I took a variety pack, and he just fell in love with the mint ones. And so now every trip that he goes on, that's his one special request, to make sure that I have the mint Ghirardelli chocolates. So very good.
Yep,
But
that sounds
the
great.
peanut butter ones are definitely good as well. So now, when you don't spend time outdoors, what negative effects do you see in your life and your business? And how do you make sure that it's the most important thing that you do?
Man, I just get grumpy. My wife will tell you the same thing. She's like, you need to call your brother and go skiing or go climbing or something. Find somebody to go do that with. And yeah, that's a big thing. I don't know why that is. I just get cooped up or something. And I don't know if it was snowing or raining here the other day. We start snowing here usually in October, September, October. And I was just kind of inside, and I was like, I'm just going to go split some wood in the backyard. We heat our house with wood, and it helps mitigate fire. And so it's kind of a win-win all around. And so I just had to get outside and just do that and just do some work. But man, I think a lot of people struggle with, how do you do that? I don't have the time or whatever. And, sometimes, I don't know, it's just really fun for me. But, there's certain things that, you just have to be intentional about. And even kind of that grumpiness, I realized I wasn't sleeping well. And this was probably about a month and a half ago. I just had, a lot going on in my life and a lot in my mind and trying to do a whole bunch of things. And I wasn't sleeping well. So I started paying attention to my health. And I'm a real healthy person. I eat really well, and I'm on this sort of special diet, and that only includes good food, unfortunately, healthy food. Mm-hmm. And so I pay attention to that, and I go on a lot of excursions and things like that. But I realized, one, I wasn't drinking enough water, and if you really want to be confused, you should Google how much water you should drink. Generally, what's accepted is if you take your body weight and divide it by 2, and in ounces, that's what you should drink. So if you're 180 pounds, that'd be 90 ounces of water. Kind of recommended. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're in a dry climate or you're doing a lot more exercise and you need more, I'm definitely not a doctor. So that was one of the things. But then the other thing was I just wasn't walking enough. And I think most people have heard the 10,000 steps per day rule that they should generally try to do. And I thought, man, I definitely walk way more than that. And so I got this little step counter, and there's actually a really good app that should be free. It's I think it's called the Moves app, Moves, or even just Move app. Facebook bought them a while back, but pretty decent. It'll drain your battery, but it'll tell you a number of steps. You just keep your phone on you somewhere. And it'll give you it's not completely accurate, but it's pretty darn close. Now I actually have a step counter, and it's in my pocket all the time, because what I found is that if I hit 10,000, that's a lot, and I feel pretty darn good. But if I'm not careful, like if I just do everything normal, we walk our kids to school in the morning, but it's only a block away, so it's 2 blocks there and back. But, I do that, and I walk around a bunch at work. I thought, man, I'm going to have 10,000 steps easy. Well, I started finding that, no, I'm only going to have about 3,500 to 4,000. And I thought I did a lot. And so I think I look at a lot of people that I see that just sit at a computer all day, and they've got to have like 2,000 steps. And that's not even close to the recommended 10,000. And that's not even going to help if you're trying to lose weight. You're going to need more than that,
right?
And a whole plan. And so, I want to tie that back to just being intentional, because 10,000 steps isn't super easy to do. It's not hard, depending on where you're coming from, but you do have to be intentional about it. I get up at this time of year. I get up at 5:30 and I start a fire, and then I go out on a walk with my dog, because nobody else will join me at that early in the morning. And we don't do a lot. We do about 3,000 steps, and I get the kids up and walk around the house. And by the time I walk them to school and back, I generally will have about 5,000 steps before I even get into work in the morning. But that does not guarantee that I'm going to have 10,000 by the end of the day. And so, right. Today I got home, we ate dinner, and doing an interview with you. So I wanted to make sure I was back on time. So we did a shorter walk with the whole family. And after this, my wife and I are going to go out on another one. And that may sound ridiculous and fanatical. I don't know, maybe crazy. But for me, it's like, hey, I want to do this, and I have to set that goal. And so I have to be very intentional about it. So a lot of this comes back to intentionality. And if you want to have really cool adventures and big, road trips where you go really cool places, put it on the calendar. It's not going to happen if it's just this idea of, I'd love to go to Yosemite. Well, that's going to be a really cool, love to do thing. That's never going to happen unless you put it on the calendar and be intentional about it. So if it's a small thing, like me trying to get 10,000 steps, I had to set my alarm, because I was going to do this in the morning, and now it's become a habit. And going for walks after dinner and stuff, it's become a habit because I was very intentional about making it one. And those bigger trips that you want to do won't ever happen unless you start planning it and put it on the calendar.
Awesome. So being intentional is the main focus, and really scheduling it.
For sure.
Scheduling it. And if it is getting up at 5:30, which a lot of people have a hard time doing, but you've turned it into something that you love doing, and you've made it a habit now. And, yep. And I've never heard that story about the 10,000 steps. So, how, in an hour, if you were to guess, like an hour long walk, how many steps do you think on average?
At a moderate pace for most people, I think you'll get 1,000 steps in 10 minutes.
1,000. Okay.
It depends on your stride. If I'm going out by myself and just really focused on not like getting an exercise, but I tend to walk really fast. I generally will get a little bit faster than that. But it's kind of my rule of thumb. If it's moderate, it's about 1,000 in 10 minutes.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing that information and that app. So we can all set a goal. Maybe we start out with 5,000 steps.
There you go.
As a small goal to go for. It seems actually 5,000 steps seems like a huge goal. Do you have a place that you consistently find yourself going to? One of your favorite places that you go to get away and think, and can you share with us what that place means to you?
I don't have any one place. I tend to get bored a little bit. Even going out, I do a lot of walking, even around our neighborhood and town. And it's kind of a backcountry town with only 7,000 people in it. But I tend to walk different ways each time. And if I'm going out, I like having adventures in different places. And I have places I go back over and over, but they rotate. For me, the things that the one thing I think that I gravitate towards is a little bit of solitude. Especially with a sport as popular as rock climbing, and it's more popular out here in Colorado than it's going to be in Indiana, where I lived at one point. But even in that, there's popular places a lot of people like to go to, and that's fun. But sometimes it's just like, man, I just want to pack up. I came out here not to hang out with other huge groups of people. I just wanted to get away and to do my own thing, and so that's really not one particular place. Solitude's pretty easy to find in Colorado, right. Fortunately. But that's what really pulls me.
Yeah, and you have definitely different places that you can go to for that solitude. I know for me, I like to take a drive up to Sequoia and Yosemite because that's where I can be alone and find that solitude. And so that's kind of an important thing is that everybody needs to find a place or some places that they can go to that is kind of quiet. Even though you may be able to go to a park in your hometown, there's you still need some place where you can just hear just the sounds of nature.
Yeah, for sure.
Not experiencing the cars and honking and different things like that. Mm-hmm. So the last question, and you talked about intentionality, and I don't know if that's the same type of thing that you want to share with us here, but what's the best advice that you have for someone who really wants to get out, but they struggle with the amount of time that they have? Maybe they work 50 to 60 hours a week, and then on the weekends they're so busy with their kids' sports and different things, and then the chores on their one day that they have when football season's not around, of course.
I was more fanatical about setting goals in the past than I have been lately. But I would look at different areas in my life. And one of the things was like, gosh, how is the same question. How am I going to do all of this? And multitasking sort of comes to mind. And I don't want this to be well, gosh, how can I maximize every single waking moment of my life? I'm not about doing that. But there's some things like, I want to get away. I want to spend more time exercising. But I also want to spend more time with my family. Well, why can't we combine those together? And a lot of outdoor stuff has been that for me. And so it's how can I combine some of these things together? And intentionality is a part of that. But it doesn't have to be, this huge trip. If you want it to be a huge trip that's going to take 2 weeks, it has to be on the calendar. No questions asked. Even if it's a year and a half from now, put it on there. Start telling your boss about it. If they're not cool, then you've got a year and a half to find another job. And so you have to carve out those things, but it doesn't have to be big. Even this something as small as a 1 day goal of 10,000 steps. It's actually, it can be daunting and overwhelming, but it's not that hard. I'll spend 20 minutes, like people, we can find 20 minutes and get up 20 minutes earlier, right? And go out for a 20-minute walk. And then when you get to work and you drop your bag off at your desk, go out on another 15-minute walk. And then right before lunch, do a 15-minute walk. And after lunch, do a 15-minute walk. And gosh, you're like 8,000 steps by the time you get home, and you haven't even. And so it's just, breaking it up and doing little things because they lead to bigger things. And even that campfire thing in your backyard. Well, gosh, everybody needs dinner. So grab a bag of hot dogs and some firewood and don't sit in front of TV for 3 hours. Because I
Right.
think the people that are struggling with finding time are also going to be the people that are wasting a lot of time in many areas of their lives.
Absolutely. And the reason why I asked that question, because I did a survey on Facebook with just some few random people, and it was about, what struggles do you have about getting outdoors and getting outdoors more? And people said, finding the time to do it. And for me, it's like, gosh, I have all the time in the world to get outdoors. Not literally, but I make that time. And I enjoy sitting in front of the TV and watching TV in the evening with my wife and getting into shows, but I don't watch nearly as much as a lot of Americans do, and a lot of different people do. So like you said, just grabbing some firewood and going cooking some hot dogs and s'mores in the backyard is huge, and especially right now with coming up with winter. People we love being inside and cozy and warm and snuggle up and stuff. But getting out, it's important to get out during the winter as well, and do those types of things. So, well, Justin, thank you so much for being here today. I just want you to share some final words of encouragement to our S'more Outdoor listeners and to tell us how we can connect with you.
Folks can reach me at backcountrytreks.com. It's a kind of an outdoor site that'll tie into what we're talking about here. And what I find encouraging, and you find a little bit of this at Backcountry Treks, but it's just, first and foremost, just seeing what other people are doing and thinking, wow, that's cool. I want to do that. And then just really taking a small percentage of that and saying, where can I start? A friend of mine who I interviewed on a show a long time ago, his name was Nate, walked across the country from the East Coast to the West Coast. And in fact, I heard him on another interview just recently, actually talking about, you don't have to walk across the country or even your state or your city. Why don't you just go walk around the block?
Right.
And so many people don't even know that they can start there and that can be fun and that can lead to other things. And so it starts with those tiny steps. And so, there's a handful of trip reports and some fun things happening over at Backcountry Treks. And then there's tons of sites that are way better than mine. Hang out in those places, but don't get caught up in them. Just remember to go out and live your own adventures too.
Well, I love what you just said. Don't get caught up in them. Hang out there, but don't get caught up in them. And exactly. I think that's what the problem that a lot of people have is they start somewhere online and then they just start going with all these different links, and all of a sudden an hour later that you've been on there and you haven't accomplished anything. Yeah. Put it down and get out. Step outside, as I like to say. Just go ahead and step outside and change your life.
Yeah.
Once again, Justin, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time and your input on helping people to get S'more Outdoor.
It's my pleasure, Brett. Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's episode of S'more Outdoor. I'm just so excited to be here with you today to share the stories and outdoor experiences from people like Justin. So a few things before I go. You can head on over to s'moreoutdoor.com to see the recap of Justin's show on his show notes page, along with ways that you can connect with him. Just type Justin in the search bar. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, we would love it if you'd leave a comment on his page where Justin and I will respond. To stay updated with new episodes, make sure you subscribe to the podcast by either clicking subscribe in iTunes, the subscribe button on Justin's show notes page, or from the app on your phone. If you'd leave a comment and a rating for the show in iTunes, that would be awesome. This helps to get the show noticed so others like you and I can learn about how the nature effect can have an impact in their lives and become inspired by these stories. Also, like us on Facebook at facebook.com/S'more Outdoor and follow us on Twitter. The username is @BATROUT. That's BATRAUDT. And make sure you sign up at S'more Outdoor. That way you won't miss out on any exclusive content I send out. So I hope Justin's story has inspired you to reconnect with nature and start living with childlike wonder again. So thank you for tuning in to the show that's changing lives around the world. Until next time, I challenge you to do something this week to get S'more Outdoor.